Welcome to From the Editor, a weekly conversation with Columbus Dispatch reporters about the cover stories they write for our Sunday print editions and online at dispatch.com. I'm Mike Shearer, executive editor of Dispatch and dispatch.com. I'm here today with Nathan Hart, who's one of our reporters here to talk about this week's cover story on how climate change is already impacting Ohio. Welcome, Nathan.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first, I always ask the reporters who sit in here with me for these conversations each week is, tell us a bit about what you do here at the Dispatch. You've been here for a little over a year now. Mm-hmm. You're a training reporter. What does that mean? And what's your normal weekly routine like?
Well, I do breaking and trending. So breaking stuff is like whatever stuff isn't happening on the cop shift, basically, which is like crimes.
Yeah.
So anything other than that we need someone to cover, I cover. Trending stuff is more like what we see on social media or what we see on Google Trends, or just even like what a staffer might suggest. Mm-hmm. There's like people are talking about this in person.
Yeah.
So I do that sort of stuff. In terms of weekly schedule, it's normally I get up and I normally have something to do right away, and then I get more stuff to do after the meeting. So yeah, it's a pretty full day.
Okay. So it can be anything. You did the stories on the driver stopped in the middle of the freeway here the last week, things like that.
Yeah,
so it's literally any topic at all you could be kind of put into any given day. So,
yeah.
Okay. I guess that keeps it interesting.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the things we try to get all reporters involved in these different cover stories, and so you were asked if you wanted to work on this one here about climate change in Ohio, and we kind of gave you just an open book a bit to go out and look and see what you could find out here. And so talk to me a little bit about how you approached that story and what you learned from this in your reporting so far.
Yeah, I learned a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. I think one of the big ones is that like we're already feeling the effects, which people might know intellectually, but they might not understand fully what that means. So I spoke with the state climatologist at OSU, and he basically gave me like a big overhead view about all these things, like what's happening. We're going to see more rain. The big overhead is it's going to be hotter in Ohio, and there's going to be more precipitation. Those are like the big line items, I'd say. But then under those things, there's like a million different things that could happen because of those effects.
So one of the things you did is you went out to a couple places around the state to check out the scene there. And one was down in New Richmond. As you were working on this, we had the flooding back in, I guess that was early April at this point. And you went down there, and in New Richmond, which was in Claremont County, east of Cincinnati there, they've already had major floods in 2015, 2018, and now 2025, which is supposed to happen like every 100 years, have one flood like that. So they've had 3 in the last 10 years. So what did you learn down there and talking to people, and who'd you meet down there?
Yeah, I spoke with the village administrator, who's also the floodplain manager. So communities like that have to have a floodplain manager for FEMA purposes and for insurance purposes. And she said that they had a real, like, one of their worst floods ever was 1997. And it was like, I think, like the water was up to like the first floor of a building, or like feet of water in the first floor of a building.
Yeah.
And so for a while there, they had a reprieve. But before the 97 flood, they didn't really have any from like 1960 until 1997. But then since then, they've had 3, like not catastrophic like 97 floods, like no loss of life, as far as I'm aware. But these ones have been more common, like 2015, 2018, and now 2018 was 7 years ago. Yeah, so it's happening more often, and people, they're kind of used to the flooding down there. So they kind of take it in stride. They're not too concerned.
It's not news that they're flooding. It's how often they're flooding. Is what the experts would say, right?
Yeah, because they're right next to the Ohio River. It's going to flood.
It's going to flood.
It's going to flood, yeah.
Okay. So, we also, in 2024, we had a record-setting number of tornadoes here in Ohio, a historic drought. That seems hard to believe after all the rain we've had here recently. And a lot of hot temperatures, and there have been wildfires in other areas too. So, you also, in your travels, we'll go back to, let's go to the weather here first, I guess. So you wrote that Ohio's winter and spring seasons are already warming faster and the state's summer nights are growing hotter. And by 2095, the experts say Ohio's summers are predicted to resemble what we see down in Arkansas and southern states right now. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it was this really neat graphic that was in a report from a research group. showing like Ohio now and then like sort of drifting away towards south, like the climate. And yeah, it's going to be definitely hotter and wetter in many ways. I think they said the summers are going to be more like Arkansas and / Louisiana, which is like obviously a much hotter climate than what we have here.
Yes.
Like the temperatures stay high 80s, low 90s in the summer, which is sometimes happens in Ohio, but it's not normal. And then the winters are more like Virginia, which is also, it's warmer, but they get more precipitation.
Well, it says here the temperature will rarely dip into the 30s by this. This is by 2095. So we're talking 70 years from now, a long time from now. But that's hard to believe that a temperature in the 30 would be rare in Ohio. That seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, that like on average they would stay above that, which is hard to imagine right now.
Okay. So you also went out to Cambridge to talk to a farmer out there in Guernsey County in eastern Ohio. Tell me about his story a little bit. And this is more of a drought story from last year. Yeah,
so he has this cattle farm. He has like 100 cows, and it's just him working there. Like he doesn't have employees, and he doesn't have a family to help him. And so last year, this drought came through, this exceptional drought, like the worst drought Ohio has ever seen, at least since they've started recording it. And the worst drought possible in the U.S. Drought Monitor, which is exceptional drought. And he was telling me that like his wheat fields are completely gone. He used to grow wheat. His hills, which were covered in grass, were like dry and sparse. And he had to install, because all his waterways were, normally the cows would just go down to the stream and drink from there. But these waterways dried up, so he had to like dig into hills and make these springs for his cattle for like $2,500 per spring. And he still hasn't fully bounced back, even though it's been a winter and now it's been a spring. He's still sort of recovering from this, and like the environment hasn't fully gotten back there. Like his wheat field, when I went in, I think it was end of March, early April, is like still completely gone. Like it hasn't come back.
Yeah. All right. So creek dried up, it says here. But now, I mean, once again, it's a little hard to believe because we've had all this rain here recently, but okay. So you also write here about the heat. We talked about this a little bit already, but as Ohio warms by an estimated 3 to 5 degrees over this current century, heat waves will become more common. But last year, we had 35 days here in Columbus where the high hit 90 degrees, which is about just under 10% of all days in a year, including the winter. So if you take that in half, it was roughly 20% of the warm season days were 90 degrees and more.
Yeah.
So that has had impacts, obviously. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like the Jim Hood, the Ohio State Associate Professor you spoke to, talked about what's happening in Lake Erie because of that.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily during the summer, but in the winter, Lake Erie is normally supposed to freeze over, but it hasn't been doing that as often over the past few decades. And when it doesn't freeze over, that has a whole bunch of effects on like aquatic life. Like it prevents certain algae from growing. It prevents fish from feeding on that algae. So yeah, like there's been more and more days where Lake Erie isn't frozen at all. And this is the most northern part of the state.
Yeah.
So a little bit colder than Columbus. And yeah, it's becoming more and more common during the winter to see like a Lake Erie that's not frozen at all.
But all those warmer days in summer contribute to that too, because the water is warmer when it gets to fall as in the winter and so on. Okay. So people might be saying, I don't live by a river. I'm not a farmer. I don't care about Lake Erie, perhaps. So the big way that most people are going to be hit by the climate change is heat and heat stress. So you talked to some experts about that, how hot temperatures can cause heat exhaustion, heat stroke, but also exacerbate conditions like heart disease, diabetes, and asthma. So you talked to a OSU Wexner Medical Center doctor, emergency doctor. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so there's the obvious like heat stroke, heat illness. Like people know generally what that looks like, but I guess heat also kind of has like a behind the scenes effect of heat also makes air quality worse, and air quality over time is bad for you. Like you're not going to cough out your lungs one day of bad air quality, but there have been studies that show that air quality over time has a cumulative effect on your health. And so when it's hotter out more days, it's like you're gonna have worse air quality. Your electricity is gonna cost more. because when a heat wave comes through is when demand is the highest, but also the heat makes it so the system is less efficient. So the demand peaks when the electric grid is running the worst.
Yeah.
So you're going to have these spikes, you're going to have power outages. A few years ago in Columbus, we had AEP, I think, had to shut down like some neighborhoods to preserve the power grid during a heat wave. So we're probably going to see more of that. But yeah, it's going to be hot out. It's going to keep being hot out. The summers are going to be hotter.
And it has a more indivisible impact on people's lives and their health, et cetera, because of that. Okay. All right. So the other thing you write about here is the wetter future. I found this fascinating. 8 of the 10 wettest years in Ohio's recorded history have occurred since 1990. So in the last 34 full years, we've had 8 of the 10 wettest years going back, I'm presuming, into the 1800s, those records. So what does that look like, and why is that happening, I guess, from the people you spoke to?
Yeah, so it's not going to be spread out evenly. The way all of them basically described it to me is the rain is going to more frequently come in like big bursts, like all at once, which is, we've seen some of that the past few weeks.
Yeah.
And it's not like in the winter, there's maybe some, but it's going to be more focused on, I believe they said like spring, like around the time where we are now, where we're going to see a lot more precipitation all at once. And the summers, it's not going to be consistent. So the summers might be a little drier, but winter and spring are going to be, wetter and warmer. So like a wetter winter won't necessarily mean like snow all the time. It could mean sleet, rain.
Because it's going to be warmer out anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but these, the story talks about how there's more of these 2 and 3 inch events that happen in a short period of time. Unlike last weekend here in Columbus, where we had more than 3 inches over 3 or so days. So that was a lot of rain, but there was not flooding because it was more spread out. So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess after doing this story and our conversation today, what's kind of your lasting impression from this experience of being a reporter on this?
I guess it kind of opened my eyes because like I said at the beginning, like a lot of people sort of understand in a vague way that climate change is happening, but they don't know particularly. But now I can really I guess sort of see some of the signs. It's kind of a difficult thing to say this one weather event is because of climate change, although the science is making that easier.
Yeah.
But over time, you can sort of see, I mean, for most people, what I think the climatologist said, just like think back to when you were a kid. I'm obviously not, decades old, but like it's different. You probably remember it differently, the weather differently. So yeah, things are changing.
Yeah, for me, it seems like we get less snow and it's warmer earlier and later. That even October is a pretty warm month from what I remember as a kid, at least I guess. But that's very anecdotal, obviously. So
yeah,
but the science seems to back all that up too. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Nathan. Appreciate you joining us today. And folks, if you see the print dispatch on Sunday, the cover for this story turned out incredibly well. Features a snow globe, and it's an illustration. It's not, it's dramatic in its presentation, but it really conveys the story well. So check that out. Some great ideas from our visuals teams here to make that happen. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.